A little under 2 weeks ago, I put out a post on my community tab about asking for questions for an Ask Me Anything. So this is to celebrate 350 subscribers. We're going to answer some of those, all the comments I received. So firstly, what was your journey like learning the CTMU? It was definitely gradual. I have little inklings of having it mentioned in various places when I look back, like several years. So I think it was definitely part of, maybe you could say, a teleological destiny of me, coming to learn and understand this. I see this back when I was back in like 7th grade, when I was looking at which things to write and to read about, and my teacher said, well, you should look at a reputable academic or a philosopher, etc. I see it in old notes. I saw a video a few years back, which is like a 3-minute interview with Chris Langan called "Proof of the Existence of God." So it's definitely popped up, but I'd say I first really seriously started to take notice of it about last April of 2022, when Michael Knowles put out the trailer for his interview with Chris Langan, which was never released, but this has been sitting in the back of my mind, and I was like, now I have, enough understanding and knowledge to actually start to try to understand this, and it kind of snowballed. From there, I read his book, FAQs About Reality, which is a collection of his Quora posts that summer, and then I got really into the Mathematical Metaphysics YouTube channel, and I actually edited a bunch of clips from that for a little while, and I read the papers that fall, so it all just kind of snowballed from there, and then I started this channel in January. In terms of your CTMU understanding, what do you think are your strengths and weaknesses? I'd say my strengths would be, I think I have a good conceptual understanding of the CTMU, whereas my weaknesses would be like the technical, in terms of actually understanding the disciplines of logic and mathematics and physics and philosophy, etc. That's what I'm basically working on over the next few years, is just to read the relevant material in each of those disciplines and to be able to form an understanding of each of, let's say, the sub-languages of the CTMU, so that I can actually express it technically and make an academic or formal logical argument for it, as opposed to talking conceptually and linguistically, which is fine because language is actually the most general structure to describe and explain reality, and I think I've done a good job, but I'd like to, I couldn't explain some physical concepts in physics, mathematics, etc., which probably I should understand at this level. What focus do you want your channel to have? This is a good question. I'm trying to pivot into doing more like pure CTMU content, etc. And also to not have as much scripted videos. As a community, how do you think we can improve in spreading the CTMU to people? This is a really important thing. I think if you look at the videos which will actually support, thousands of people getting to understand the CTMU, it would be, big videos which are really well produced, etc., which then are continually recommended over the years. This is Mr. Beast talked about this with Lex Friedman in terms of how to actually get your channel and content to grow. But I also think we need to do one-to-one comments, responding to comments, actually building community and helping people understand and apply the CTMU. Ideally, at least everyone who watches the CTMU channels on YouTube should be able to have a proficient understanding of the basic concepts, etc. How do you plan to improve your channel in the future? I think I'm definitely going to try to do more consistent uploads. Sometimes now I'll do I won't upload for a couple days or a week, and then I'll upload 3 or 4 videos, and I don't think that's good. So more consistent uploads more and better content. I'm gonna get a mic soon. Probably I'm gonna start doing more interviews with people who aren't necessarily even associated with the CTMU yet, but have relevant and interesting insights. And I'm going to try to have videos just explaining, basic concepts, interacting with the audience, etc. What are your thoughts on the Shroud of Turin? So this would probably be a better question for my friend Greg Wilford, but my understanding of the Shroud of Turin is that this hasn't been confirmed or denied by the Catholic Church, but it's theorized to be the burial cloth of Jesus. It has the correct, blood stains that you can kind of recreate the face, and this is what we expect of Jesus, and the blood from the crown of thorns, it's theorized, etc., and you can actually recreate a 3D image, basically, of Jesus's face. I think it could be that there was definitely a human under there. I don't know necessarily that it was Jesus. I think it's cool if it is, but I don't know that the evidence is conclusive. You can show this. I think it's possible. I don't see any reason to doubt it, but I'm just not sure. I haven't looked into it enough. This one says, in your previous videos you've mentioned two major cosmogonies, Timaeus and the Judeo-Christian, and said that these are basically the two cosmogonies. I don't remember having said that. I've never read Timaeus by Plato. I'm reading The Republic, and I've read Phaedo and maybe one other of the dialogues, but I haven't read Timaeus. But basically, I wouldn't say that there are just two major cosmogonies. You see this throughout history, but usually I'd say all of the kind of creation myths center around you have some sort of primordial chaos, and then so this is the tohu and bohu in the Genesis creation myth. I don't know about, I think in some like the Assyrian or Mesopotamian myths, they're similar, that there's a god which kind of represents, the abstract kind of feminine primal being from wit. And then obviously in the Judeo-Christian view, there are two creation myths. The first is in Genesis 1:1, which is, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and then he goes through the 7 days and creates has the various aspects of creation. But it's always, I think the thing which unites, I don't know the Timaeus creation myth, but the thing which unites all of those creation myths is that there's essentially an ordering good which is abstracted out of the realm of potential. This is how Chris Langan explains the creation of the universe, as well as there's this unbound telesis, which is pure ontic freedom, pure self-generative potential. It can become everything. And then there's an intrinsic asymmetry, because potentiality has an impulse towards, having some sort of ordering thing to parse that. So then God and the unbound telesis, that potential is identified with God. So then God creates the structure and evolution of the universe in order to identify himself with that, because God trializes himself into creator, creation, and creativity, or theory, model, and universe, because his being is essentially the same as his self-knowledge. He has to constantly identify himself through partially restricted contents. This is why there are images of God in creation, human beings, and to a lesser extent animals, even plants, atoms, etc. But I don't think these are the only two. I know in Timaeus Plato's idea is that God is only the author of the good, so God is basically rearranging everything. But these are definitely the main. And the other creation myth in the Christian tradition is from John 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among men. So that would be, and the Word is the Logos. So this basically represents creation itself, but also the highest and loftiest principles and the intrinsic ends of creation become manifest in that initial event, and that's also identified with both God and Jesus, because Jesus is the ideal of human perfection. So God, which is then identified with God as well through that intrinsic teleology. So I think these are all valid creation myths. The Chris Langan says, there is actually a certain level on which, science and religious metaphor come into mutual, that they're actually revealed to be the same on a certain level. And I think this applies both to Plato and to the Judeo-Christian myths, as well as, pretty much most creation myths, even, the Aztecs, Mesopotamians. I don't know that much about them. But how is sin defined in the CTMU? What are the meta-economics of sin? So sin would be defined as, reality has certain intrinsic ends. I'd say the definition of sin in the CTMU, obviously there's a basis for it, which is metaphysical and more advanced than other models give. People usually just say you shouldn't commit sin. But the basic definition is the same. I'd say there are two competing schools in ethics. One would be the utilitarian, or let's say two axioms. One would be you should act as though if you generalized your action to everyone could do that, then that would produce the most positive results, and also to treat others as yourself. So this is a certain moral symmetry, both of these, so that you shouldn't, that there is an intrinsic moral law which says that you can't, that you have to make this the best of all possible world for yourselves and for others, and there are actually intrinsic ends, and by doing this you're supporting and reinforcing the structure of reality, and this is actually the intrinsic end of your existence. But yeah, so it's so I'd say where you'd say virtue is, you're striving towards a higher form of love and unity and etc., and not having, evil. Sin would be the opposite, so that would be anything which counteracts that, which is trying to destroy that which is pure and blessed in creation. So what are the meta-economics of sin? So the meta-economy, or the telic economy in the CTMU, is essentially defined, if you think about the regular monetary economy, this is essentially a generalization of human utility, because I can give you money and I can get goods and services which, took effort in order to make, whether that's through industrial or they were handmade. Either way, it's I'm trading my money for human utility. But that's actually a restriction of the telic economy, which actually represents all human interaction, and what is the intrinsic end of that, and that is, again, striving towards that higher and a higher form of love and unity. So the telic economy is basically all human interaction. The economy is essentially a vast favor bank when viewed through this lens. So when you're sinning, you're taking away from the collective human enterprise. You're draining good as a whole. So how are debts paid? When two people forgive each other, is this God forgiving himself? Sin is usually considered as a transgression, and then you owe some sort of debt to either others or to God, etc. This is a helpful way of looking at it. If you remember in the New Testament, Jesus said, this is Jesus' prayer, Our Father who are in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory, now and forever. Amen. And so, how are debts paid? You have to offer your sin up to God, say that you'll do his will, and actually become a new and reformed being, become the kind of person who wouldn't commit that sin again. And then when you're in that scenario, the way to know if you've truly repented of your sin is if you're in the same scenario and where you have the opportunity to do that, and you consciously make the choice not to, because you're a different kind of person than when you do this. And this often takes, a great amount of reflection and even pain, but ultimately, God can forgive you, but you have to recommit yourself. And almost there's this concept in Protestant Christianity of being born again, that you have to enter into a kind of communion with God. When two people forgive each other, is this God forgiving himself? I would say, I would say no, because God is only the author of the good. Of course, we're images of God, which means that we have the ability to do good or evil. So when two people are forgiving each other, I'd say that this would represent two people coming into a sort of covenant to become different kinds of people and to align themselves with God's will and practice the ethic of, care and mercy, etc., taught and embodied by Christ in the New Testament. But I wouldn't say it's God forgiving himself, because we're not fully God. We're just images of God, which means that we are able to do evil. Are those in control literally possessed, and is Satan in control of their actions or demons? Man's trying to get me demonetized. Actually, I'm not monetized to start. I need 1,000 subscribers, so I'll answer this. Yes, people in control are literally possessed, and this can be understood in both a literal and a metaphorical sense. So essentially, Satan, that you need, in order to get to the top of those power structures, you need to be the most ruthless, and this selects for, the antisocial personality traits: narcissism, psychopathy, sociopathy, sadism, and Machiavellianism. So the people already there aren't the best. And the way Satan takes form in creation, he wants to, is through human beings' free will, is through our conscious decision to commit evil. So essentially, if you want to really get to the highest echelons of power, you need to, how would I explain that? Satan nucleates power structures through the satanic egregore, and the egregore is the collective thought forms and patterns of people. So in order to get to the top echelons of power, you have to subscribe to whatever they're saying and give up whatever morals, etc. And this means that you're subscribing to a telon, which is designed to give you money and power in exchange for your soul. You're cutting off your connection to God, morality, etc. And you can literally become demonically possessed, meaning that you lose your free will in a certain sense, but this is only because you gave it up. You're not a victim of demonic possession, but a perpetrator. You are identifying with that demon. So are those in control literally possessed, and Satan in control of their action through so then Satan is able to act coherently, because all of these people, and then this is also why, because Satan is able to act coherently through these egregores, through these demons, etc. But there's also an optimistic thing, which is that if you really think about it, then the demons are also. This is why in the New Testament it says, we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but with principalities, with evil spirits, etc. Because it's actually a spiritual war. Are in control of their action. So because then if you think about what's actually in charge is just what the Bible tells us. Satan is the god of this world, is the prince of this world. So Satan, demons, and the gods of accumulation, etc., Mammon, Beelzebub, the god of subversion of the social order, etc. These are the spirits in charge of our world. So then the only way to counteract that, this is what Paul says, is to put on the armor of God, put on the sword of the Holy Spirit, and actually go and defeat this, because God is ultimately more powerful than Satan, but he needs people in order to actually fulfill his will. Is the ritualistic behavior they engage in intended only to dazzle those under them, or do they believe they literally gain power through them? I.e., are they attempting to summon something? I wouldn't say the ritualistic behavior they engage in is intended only to dazzle those under them, for the simple reason that if you look at these, meeting, like what was it? The thing Alex Jones did, the something ranch. but they'll have these are held in secret in, in crazy remote places in the woods, definitely away from where anyone would ever see this. But also sometimes you'll see this in public, so this could possibly be that they're trying to subvert God and morality so much that when you see this publicly, seeing people openly mocking God, that people are just conditioned to put up with this, and you can't do that. But I also think that they that in some cases, at least the highest echelons, they've actually tapped into power from spiritual principalities, and that these are incarnating through them. So I do think that they literally gain power through demons and that they do think that doing satanic rituals, etc., could possibly increase their power. They seem to believe they can become gods, or somehow subvert and trick gods. This is either not going to work, yet cause a lot of destruction in the process, or tempt God to hit the reset button. That's true. So this is essentially one of the first stories in the Bible is the story of the Tower of Babel. It's people want to define good and evil on their own terms, want to build a tower to the sky to essentially kill God or take God's place. And this is a story which has recurred throughout human history, of where humankind, when we put aside God and morality and teleology, then we always end up committing atrocities. And these people, I think people assume that the people at the highest echelons are atheist materialists. This is certainly what they push in terms of academia, etc. But I think at the highest echelons, I think these people are very much understand a lot of metaphysics, a lot of if you look at the intelligence agencies, etc., a lot of psi abilities, maybe even reincarnation. I saw this paper from the CIA from the 60s, which kind of described, similar to the CTMU, the kind of recursive nature of time, where it's a cross-temporal feedback loop. They definitely, I think they're ultimately gaining their power not from God, but from something else entirely, and they want to subvert and trick God because they think that they are gods, that they can totally recreate the world in their own image. This is the Luciferian impulse, is that you can run the world better than God, but ultimately this is not their world, it's God's world. And either we're going to have enough good people and say this is enough, we're not going to put up with this and that, but ultimately I don't think this can last forever, because evil and Satan hate existence and want to go out of existence, and so it's ultimately self-annihilative. But it and maybe the remnant of, this is what God talks about in Isaiah, that the remnant can build the new Jerusalem. But I hope it doesn't get to that point, because he said that's going to cause a lot of destruction in the process. And why do they always want to mess with kids? Our final question. Well, there are two aspects to that. One is the literal pedophilia. You see this with for example, Jeffrey Epstein. Whitney Webb wrote a great book about this called One Nation Under Blackmail, which shows how even before Jeffrey Epstein, the intelligence agencies have always used sexual blackmail, etc., in order to have control over the highest classes, over politicians, etc., and the trafficking of children. You saw this with Epstein. Epstein was, there's some evidence, I think, I haven't read the book, but I think basically the idea is that he's a connected to intelligence agencies, to the CIA, to Mossad, which is the Israeli version of the CIA. But I think why there is the propensity to mess with kids would be probably just because a lot of the people, if you think about the most ruthless and people, these are people who also like are really weird, are really evil, will do anything to fulfill their sexual appetites, etc. They don't like God, they don't like morality, and these are also people who were like let's take someone like Bill Gates. That was a nerd in high school, never had anything until he was probably like very, very old. And then you also see this on the kind of transgender LGBTQ front of them pushing this culturally, and I think that's because if you think Satan is that which subverts God and the traditional order, then obviously you have to, Jesus says, don't mess with the kids, because you'd be better off having a millstone over your neck. But if you want to destroy what's pure and blessed, the people who are the most malleable, who are the most easiest to indoctrinate, and then in a generation you're not going to have any family, traditional values, gender binary, etc. Even though these are all important, not only biological but metaphysical institutions. This is going to go awry. So that's all. I think ultimately you have to remember that you can be that the body of God is ultimately stronger than Satan, but he requires warriors, people who are actually willing to fight, and this will probably require an even more fundamental understanding. This requires a more fundamental understanding of reality than the elites have, and they actually have quite a sophisticated nature, even though this is ultimately not coming from God. So you need a metaphysic to organize around. That's what the CTMU provides, and you need people who are willing to fight like hell in order to win the war, because we wrestle not with flesh and blood but with principalities. So you have to actually uphold and sanctify and defend what is pure and blessed in creation if you want to keep it. So thank you. Let the light shine forth in the darkness. May the peace of our Father in heaven be upon you. Like and subscribe. Peace.